This is presentation number 2 in the Advanced Networking course, where we will this time talk about basic switch configuration. When a switch starts up, it will go through a boot sequence, and it starts out by doing the power on self-test, and after that it will load the boot loader software, and it will start by initializing the CPU and then the flash file system, and it will go through the default iOS settings. And when we look at the settings, we can go in and describe in our iOS how we want the switch to start up. Whether we want it to just, by default, it will take the first available operating system present in flash, but if we have more than one operating system stored in our flash, we can go in and we can tell the boot environment in the variable which one it should start with. And then also we can go in and set if we want to start with the configuration file stored in NVRAM. So these things we can do and set up if we would like to do something else than the default. But otherwise it will start the iOS from flash, and it will look for a configuration file in NVRAM. When the switch is starting up, we will also be able to see the different lamps over here blinking, so that we can see how far along in the process the switch is in starting up. And also if there are something that has gone wrong, for instance, we will also be able to see the in the port status LEDs. Then, if we want to configure the switch, we can of course just attach a console cable to it, and then we can go in and configure it from a terminal on our computer. We could also apply an IP address to the switch, and the IP address here is only to be able to manage the switch remotely. So we will set up an IP address on something called the SVI, Switch Virtual Interface, and normally we choose a VLAN. In this case that we will look at now, we will choose VLAN 99 and set an IP address on that, and then set up with the address, subnet mask, and a default gateway. So in this case, how to do it? Well, we go to Configure Terminal, we go in and say interface VLAN 99. This is just, VLAN 99 is just a number that we have chosen now for the management VLAN. Then we say IP address and the IP address we want, and then we say no shutdown to open and activate VLAN 99. Then if we want to have a default gateway, which we probably want, well then we do an IP default gateway in the general config mode and set it up in that way. And then everything is set up, and then we can attach to our switch by using the network. Some other basic stuff we can configure is, for instance, whether we want full or half duplex communication. There is almost no reason why we should want half duplex, but we can configure it. So we can change the duplex and the speed also. Normally it's just set to full speed and full duplex. But we can change that, and we can manually configure it by going into one of the ports, for instance interface fast Ethernet 01, and we can do a duplex full and speed 100, which means that we automatically set it to 100 megabit. If you attach a device that only run 10 megabits, well then you will not be able to get that to work, of course. Otherwise it will just, auto configure and see what's in the other end of the link. We can also do an MDIX auto feature. This is to avoid thinking about what kind of a cable type do I want to set it up, because normally if we have two devices that are the same, for instance if I connect two switches, I would actually have to use a crossover cable. But I can avoid this problem with thinking of what kind of a cable I want by using the MDIX, Automatic Medium Dependent Interface crossover. which means that it will just find out whether I put in a crossover or a straight through cable, and it will just adjust to that in the correct way. So this is a good thing to set up. And to do so, you go in and say the command MDIX auto on the ports. I think they are enabled by default in all new switches. So yeah, and you can look at it also if you want to see whether you have set it on with the show controllers command, so you can see that. Yep. Otherwise, there are of course here a lot of different show commands that you can use: show startup config, show running config, show flash, show version, show history, show IP also, and show MAC address table if you want to look at the MAC address table. There could of course be some issues with some of the ports, and you can actually do a show interface on the port and see whether, for instance, you have runs and joins. Runs are packages that are too small, joins are packages that are too big. You can see if there are input errors, CRC errors. You can see whether you have collisions or not. This is typically something that if you experience that there is a problem with one of your ports, it could be that you have attached some kind of faulty equipment in the other end of the cable, and it will generate a lot of noise on your network. And then you can actually just go in and monitor it on your port and see. And then of course there are different ways of solving that. There could also be a mismatch, for instance, whether you have incidentally set it to half duplex. You can have set the speed incorrectly, so that it will not correspond to what you attach in the other end. And of course you can have a faulty cable that will just send out a lot of noise. So you can use the show interfaces to see whether we have problems on our port. Yeah, and that was the basic switch